Welcome to Whatsoever More or Less. My name is Jason, and today I got a quick thought for you regarding the pardon power. The Paul brothers, not the Paul brothers, well, kind of. Latter-day Saints was covering all of President Trump's pardons that he's done, which is one of his plenary authorities granted in Article 2. The only prohibition on it, according to the text of the Constitution, is impeachments. It doesn't matter what the courts say, the courts do not have the authority to redefine the Constitution. I know that President Oaks at one point in his University of Virginia lecture made a quick kind of grant you a quick win type of statement where he says, we all know that the court was intended to be the final arbiter of the meaning of the Constitution, but I'd rather talk about the psychology behind it kind of thing, or whatever he said. Look at all of his cumulative statements regarding the court as the final arbiter of the meaning of the Constitution. Basically what he's saying is, yes, there were people in the convention that intended it to be, but it never made the threshold. So I've covered that in a previous video. Look it up. It says judicial supremacy didn't even make the cut at Philadelphia. So we're going to skip anything that the Supreme Court has said about what the pardon power says and look what the Constitution says only. It's a plenary power, and the only restriction on it is the, what do you call it? Oh yeah, impeachment. So you cannot pardon impeachment. Okay. Now, that's according to the actual Constitution, not according to the Supreme Court, not according to anything else. Okay. And because the Supreme Court is not the Constitution. Now, moving on here. Apparently, President Trump has issued, and they were making this comparison. President Biden issued $500,000 worth of pardons regarding fraud cases, where he pardoned somebody in fraud cases. That's one category of cases, of course. It's not all of the potential pardons, but it's besides the point. Biden has the authority to issue pardons just like any had the authority to. Theoretically, as long as he was actually given the consent of the governed, which I think is still a debatable topic based on, first off, the times, manners, and places, but you can look up other videos I've done on the times, manners, and places and what the Constitution actually says about which branches are allowed to modify the times, manners, and places. It's not the judicial or the executive at all, just to let you guys know, okay? It doesn't matter if it's an emergency or what have you. So moving on here. Biden, theoretically, if he did actually win the election without illegally modifying the election rules, look up the Time Magazine article on that, then he did actually have the plenary power to pardon. That's all there is to it. Whether it was with an auto pen or what have you, right? President Trump has the plenary power to pardon. Let's look at what Madison and Hamilton said about that. Madison said it is impossible for the pardon power to be the undoing of the United States of America. I just looked up some statistic real quick. Through a quick AI search for these kind of things, an AI search is fine for me. The percentage of federal, if you just look at the percentage of the number of people that are currently in federal prisons, the amount of people that a president pardons is less than 1% of them, period. It's hardly anything, and that's not even counting all the past people that were in prison, what have you. So it's a minuscule number. Madison said it was risk-free as far as like compromising the republic, and that it was impossible for the president to exercise the power so much. And plus, there's always the impeachment power of Congress to, if he's getting out of control, just remove him. Right? Secrecy is a concept that's important to understand in the Constitution. I've been commenting on that a lot lately too, I think in my last video. By the way, if I sound sick, it's because I am. I've totally masked the symptoms a ton today, so I'm on a bunch of stuff if I'm acting kind of crazy, so that I can finish my homestead chores finally, because it's all on me. It's all on me, even when I'm sick. So anyhow, yeah, Madison said that it's a risk-free thing. There would be more risk if you ask me to not give the president the pardon power, okay? Secrecy is a concept. Secrecy is an important concept in the Constitution, mentioned in Article 1, Section 5, if I'm not mistaken. But that's not the only place, if I'm not mistaken, too. So anytime you have to give out information on things that potentially helped the United States government deal with an enemy, then you're basically compromising, you're aiding and abetting the enemies of the United States, if you ask me. So we'd call that treason. So you want to be careful about requiring transparency in the reason for all pardons. Hamilton said that the pardon power could be used for restoring peace. The pardon power could be used, Jefferson used the pardon power to correct punishment for unconstitutional laws that were unconstitutional in the first place with the Sedition Act. So sure, it's that too, but it doesn't have to be that. I'm thinking of as the son of a cop who, lifelong law enforcement officer, probably one of the best the state of Arizona ever had. Shout out to my dad. He's kind of awesome, and he made some important busts back in the day when he was working undercover. And I know that they used informants from time to time. I remember having some guy come stay at my house who showed up on a Harley, I think, had long hair, and he was a guy who had just gotten out, who was pardoned because of some plea deal or something like that. You know, some guy who used to fly the planes from South America up to here or something. You know, it doesn't matter. I'm hanging out in the front yard with the dude, because this is the way my dad was. He loved people, even if he said, just because somebody's made bad choices doesn't make them a bad person, right? So that's a good leader of the church, by the way, you guys. And so he takes this guy who my dad had apparently made a deal with back when he was an undercover cop. Shows up and he's teaching me about the constellations and stuff like that. Makes sense. Found out years later when I asked my dad, who was that guy? I remember this kind of a different guy for showing up to our house. Oh yeah, he was somebody that had been an informant for us or something like that. So they get special deals. They get special deals for giving information. And this is a thing that Hamilton argued the president needed the power to do, right? I wouldn't try to take that away from him. I totally wouldn't try to take that away from him. Look, just because you looked up a quick surface of the amount of money that was punished, there's wrongful convictions you need to consider, laws that are unjust laws that you need to consider, there's information that you need to consider, there's making the peace that you need to consider. There are so many considerations, and unfortunately, but fortunately, it really is fortunately, the Constitution doesn't require a disclosure of the reason to the entire public. It just doesn't. It simply says you cannot pardon an impeachment, which everybody's going to know if the president's trying to pardon somebody who's impeached anyhow. So that would be obviously disclosed. So, look, the court has added their interpretations. They're not allowed to add their interpretations. They're really not. They're not allowed to interfere. Look up President Oak's talk, Defending Our Divinely Inspired Constitution, where he talks about the ebbs and flows of one branch either exercising the powers that rightfully belong to another branch or impeding another branch from exercising its powers that rightfully belong to it. For the courts to set parameters that the Constitution itself doesn't set, when they themselves aren't constitutionally authorized to... and this is another thing, when you look at that University of Virginia talk from President Oaks, he says, we all know they were intended to do this, to be the final arbiter of the meaning of the Constitution, but they're constitutionally obligated to this, right? So I think he gives a very clear distinction, right? They aren't constitutionally authorized to give us the final meaning of the Constitution. And look, Defending Our Divinely Inspired Constitution, he talks about inspired amendments, but uninspired Supreme Court interpretations fairly early on in the talk, okay? So you have to look at Article 2 itself. What does it say about the pardon power? Now, little note for the Paul brothers real quick here. Little recommendation, and this is a recommendation honestly for everybody. If you served a mission especially, how many times did you read through that white Bible, that missionary handbook as we call it, right? You probably read through it a ton. You probably could name off the top of your head, hey, I'm not allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to do this, as a representative of the Lord, because when you're in the government too, you're a representative. And so what's your handbook as a representative of the government, of the sovereign, which is we the people? Your handbook is the Constitution, not stare decisis, not what the Supreme Court said. And so if I'm not mistaken, if you've served in the military, you took an oath to the Constitution. How often did you read your white Bible on your mission? How often have you read the Constitution? Because the two are pretty similar in length. Constitution is not super long, okay? And it's not what the courts say it is. The Constitution is the Constitution. We need to restore that understanding. Again, if I think President Benson said the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. It will be saved by citizens who understand the principles of the Constitution, understand the Constitution, who love it, and by members of the church who stand up for it, right? And so that's me. I'm trying to stand up for it. And it won't be saved in Washington. The greatest, most powerful things that can be done in the Constitution, Article 5, the states. Article 6, Clause 3, the individuals. 9th Amendment, 10th Amendment, the preamble. It comes down to the states and the individuals a lot. Saving the Constitution is going to be separated off. And one more thing here. Don't complain about the pardon power. I just don't recommend it. And I really like the Paul brothers, by the way. If it wasn't for the fact that I regularly follow them, this video wouldn't even be getting made. So, but complaining about the pardon power existing is basically complaining about a major portion of the Constitution, honestly. The single unitary chief executive, with his ability to do a certain amount of things, to be a backup plan where Congress falls short, because we've seen what happens when you have a Congress only in the Articles of Confederation and it fails miserably. Look up the talk by L. Tom Perry called Truth and Liberty that was given back in 1987 at BYU. Anyhow, I think that's it. Don't complain about things like this that are just part of what makes the Constitution what it is. It's like those people who complain that we're going to have a patchwork of policies all across the United States. That's what the Constitution set up. That's literally what it set up, you guys. It's a compound republic, as James Madison said it, or a more perfect union, as the Constitution itself says. Or let's look at the President Hinckley quote where he's sitting down. I think it was with Larry King. I can't remember for sure. And he says, Larry King says something about husbands bossing wives around or something like that, a patriarchal church. And he's like, President Hinckley say, look, no. It's not the husband bossing the wife around or the wife bossing the husband around. They're equal partners. All right. They're going to have their own different things they're involved in, their own different this, their own different that. But neither one of them is supposed to completely rule over the other. They all take care of it in the end, one way or another. That's what it's supposed to be. That is what the Constitution set up. Look at the second principle in defending our divinely inspired Constitution, the division of the powers between the states and the federal government. And then again, the division of powers. That's his third principle, between the executive, legislative, and judicial. It's important that the executive has this kind of power, you guys. It was important in law enforcement for my dad, I'm pretty darn sure, and especially in the undercover world. And then I think, gosh, isn't the undercover world very comparable actually to what our president gets stuck dealing with a lot? So if you think he's out of control, you've always got the impeachment power. And that's one thing that the Federalist Papers and other guys kept arguing for. You've always got the impeachment power. So, but no, I think, maybe some of his pardons were done for unjust reasons, but they just don't disclose the reasons for which they're done in the first place as a general rule. So it's impossible to know. So to complain about it is just to complain about the Constitution. So I just don't think it's worth it. Let the pardon power be. It's an important part of the Constitution. And that's my thought for you guys. Have a safe day.